Hello, this is Kaii Marie, and you are listening to episode 3, season 1 of the Healing Element podcast. If you are watching the episode on the Healing Element podcast YouTube channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you are listening by audio, please be sure to subscribe to the Healing Element podcast and download today's episode. Today's topic is understanding post-traumatic slave syndrome, an African American experience. Please enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Healing Element Podcast, a weekly discussion giving you the tools to understand and heal from intergenerational trauma. I am your host, Kaii Marie. To find out more information about the topics discussed today, visit KaiiMarie.com. Hello, and welcome to the Healing Element Podcast. I'm your host, Kaii Marie. I'm so excited that you decided to join me yet again another week as we learn how we can break the cycle of trauma. So if you've been following me for the past few weeks, you know that I've been talking about Dr. Joy DeGruy's theory, post-traumatic slave syndrome. And we're continuing the conversation about symptoms that she provides that shows that you probably suffer from PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome. So if you listened last week, I talked about her first symptom that she provided, which was vacant esteem. And then we also talked about how to deal with that. If you suffer from vacant esteem, what do you do? And Dr. DeGruy says that you have to build your self-confidence. So we talked about that and how you can do it. Today, we're going to be talking about another symptom that Dr. DeGruy provides, and it is called ever-present anger. And so if you've been joining me, you know that I have some PowerPoint presentations that I've been using to kind of outline all of this. If you are watching on YouTube, you will see it, of course. And if you are listening on the podcast, no worries. If you do want to check out the slides, just go to the Healing Element Podcast YouTube channel and you will be able to check it out. Okay, either way, you're going to get some really good information. So I have been taking some excerpts from Dr. Joy DeGruy's book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, because I really want you to really hear it from her. I can kind of paraphrase and I can put my own interpretation, but I think it's really important with this type of topic to hear from the person that developed this theory through her years of research. Okay, so now we're going to talk about ever-present anger. What does that mean? So what I'm going to do now is share my screen. Give me 1 minute, podcast fam. So we set this up. Okay. So ever-present anger, what does that mean? And before I go into kind of like something recent that we all can relate to, I am going to go to how Dr. Joy DeGruy defines it. Give me 1 moment. Okay. So this ever-present anger, I'm on page 132. If you have the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, I'm on page 130. I think I said 132. It's 130. All right. So this ever-present anger, this is Dr. Joy DeGruy, is one of the most pronounced behavior patterns associated with post-traumatic slave syndrome. So why is it that anger is such a large part of the experience of most of African Americans? Are we inherently a violent people? How many times have we heard a variation of slavery's over? You all have been free for nearly 150 years. You are all blessed to live in a nation where all you have to do is pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and work hard. And so becoming anything you want, even president. So why are you so angry? Have we heard that before? If you have heard that before, please leave a comment and let me know. What was your response to that? How did you feel when you were told, why don't you just get over it? And you've probably been told this by other Black people, right? What did that do to you when you experience a racial incident and someone said, and you knew it had to do with race, right? Maybe the person didn't come right out and call you the N word or something like that, but you knew that the outcome of the situation was based on race. And so you said that. You said, hey, this is a race issue. And someone said, oh gosh, always playing the race card, Black folk. How did that make you feel? And was there anything that you could do about it once someone said that to you? Think about the microaggressions that maybe you deal with at work or maybe other functions, volunteer activities that you're a part of. How do you deal with those microaggressions? And is there a space that we can go to and talk about it when we do experience it? Or do we just internalize or do what I used to do? I try not to do that anymore, but go on social media and do like the epic long rant because we just have to get it out. We just feel like it's smothering us that we can't say anything or there's no one that even cares to listen. Or when you do share it with someone, people just say, well, that, honey, that's just the way it is. And you're like, I don't want to just, I don't want to hear that's just the way it is. Right? So just think about that a little bit as I read this other part that Dr. Joy DeGruy gives. Now, this is on page 132, where she says, Blacks have been told lies about slavery. They have been told lies about being free, about inclusion, equality, and justice, about the pursuit of happiness, security, and prosperity, about civil rights, fair housing, education, and jobs. The lies have spanned centuries. What is most consistent is the absence of an accurate historical accounting of the inclusive quest of equality and freedom for all citizens of the United States, especially those of color. So a lot of times that you'll see many folks, these political commentators and people within our community and outside of our community will make statements about Black people, lazy. If we could just all come together, if we could just all build together, that would change our condition. But if you look at history, when we have done that, as I discussed in, it was either the last episode or the episode before, we saw what happens when we had thriving communities. Right? There have been these white vigilante groups that came in and just straight burned them to the ground. If that didn't happen, there was some type of law that was passed that inhibited us from continuing to grow. So there has always been something that would occur to stop the progress of us thriving as a community. So instead of thriving, we've just been surviving. And because no one really is speaking to that, the truth of our experience here in this country, that Dr. Joy DeGruy says there's this ever-present anger because no one is speaking truth to our condition and how we got here. So my question to you is, are we going to start speaking truth to ourselves about how we're treated as African Americans, how we really view ourselves, our history in this country? When are we going to start speaking truth to ourselves? So it's not, I mean, it is important to speak truth to others, but are we lying to ourselves? Are we looking at the lives of celebrities and using that to kind of gauge the truth about where our current state in this country or where we are as a people economically, professionally? Or are we going to start telling the truth? We've seen the images on social media of the relationship between many of our communities and police. We've seen instances where Black men and Black women have been followed in stores, been kicked out of stores, been accused of stealing. We've seen redlining. We've seen gentrification. We continue to see how we are treated as an other. And this episode will air during this whole COVID-19 crisis. I think if we didn't know it before COVID-19, we see it now, the disparities that exist in our system, not just our healthcare system, but also economically. So our question is, are we going to start telling the truth about where we are as a community and how we fit into the fabric of this country? And part of your healing process is being honest. The first step is acknowledging, okay, there's a problem. So are we ready to do that? And it takes guts to do that. It's not easy to have an honest conversation about where we are and what we've gone through. And even though it may be painful to talk about our past and even where we are at this point, there's also a sense of, but we're still standing, right? May have one leg and one good arm, but we're still standing. That says something, right? And so if we as adults, if we start to have an honest look at the society in which we live and where we are, as I said, in the fabric of this country, then we can start having honest conversations with our children. Now, I will say this, I am not a parent, so I don't want to come off as, she's telling us what to do and she don't even have any kids. But I know that our children, they need to know the truth about the society in which they live, because this is how they will be able to make sure that they develop the tools to thrive, to survive in this type of society. I want to read one other passage to you guys from Dr. Joy DeGruy's book. It's on page 133. She says, today, the African-American family has continued to rear their offspring to survive in the face of a multitude of indignities, disrespects, and blocked goals. Standing out among these are blocked opportunities for education. Through the systematic elimination of affirmative action policies and de facto school segregation, as well as Black opportunities for economic self-sufficiency, as a result of discriminatory bank lending policies, redlining, and gentrification. Thus, much of the anger is a reaction to our hopes and dreams being continuously undermined by the institutions which govern us and the racism that permeates American society. That's heavy, right? Dr. DeGruy says much of the anger, that ever-present anger that we experience, is a reaction to our hopes and dreams being continuously undermined by the institutions which govern us and racism that permeates American society. And the thing is, and y'all let me know if you agree with this. So we see all of these studies it feels like every month, but let's say every year. There's some study that comes out that talks about the disparities that exist in every area of this country, of the US, right? And we talk about health, we talk about economics, we talk about the single parent household, we talk about the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap. So we talk about it, and then we see how other groups who are not classified as African American receive benefits from the federal government. They have political leaders, politicians who go out and fight to make sure that they're able to have access to resources. And we kind of see many of our political leaders don't really go out and advocate for us. And so I'm not going to make this a political podcast. I'll try not to. But that also is part of that ever-present anger, right? Where it feels like, okay, so people that have a district, so I'm talking about politicians, right, that have a district, in which the population is predominantly African American, why are you not advocating for us? And even during this whole COVID-19, where we see our communities just being ravaged, I am not affiliated with any political party. So I'll say that to start off with. I don't see, so Democrats probably get about 80 to 90 or so percent of the African American vote. And when I see what's happening in our communities with this COVID-19 and also how it's impacting us economically, I'm wondering where all these politicians, whether Democrat or Republican, that come banging on our churches, coming to our community centers, wanting a vote, where are they now? And so there is that ever-present anger, right? That you kind of watch assistance provided and advocacy for other groups, but not yours. And so when you do bring it up, it's like, well, it's for everybody, right? But then you see that's not always the same response for other groups. So that feeds to what Dr. Joy DeGruy had said when it's that part of that symptom, right? When she said PTSS, there's this sense that the institutions, the government that exists, whether real or imagined, that it really isn't for you. But when you see that type of neglect of our community happen, you begin to think that, well, it must be true. So I have to pull myself by the bootstraps. But then you can't really do that because of discrimination. So therein lies that ever-present anger, because no one's acknowledging it, but there's always research papers. There's always a paper about the traumas, I should say, that African Americans experience. But when we want to talk about solutions, real solutions that would really change this society, we start to step away. So I want to talk to you about a solution that Dr. Joy DeGruy provides. Now, what I love about her book is that she shares with us what we can start to do as individuals, right? So it's not so much about, we all got to get together. We got to get together. It's not about us getting together. It's about us individually doing the internal work so that when we do come together, it can be constructive. Okay? So take a listen to this. She says, one thing that we can do is to begin to take control of our inner world. And that's a part of healing. You're going to hear this throughout this whole podcast, is about beginning to go within. I did an interview, which you guys will hear, with a wonderful she does like informed body work. Her name is Naomi. And we talked about how different types of healing modalities helps people connect to their body, connect to their breath. And so that means connecting to their body, connecting to breath, connecting to that person within, who, as she had said in this interview, which you guys will hear, that many times sometimes we've never felt that connection, or never felt our body was that safe place, never felt that connection to that inner world that we have. But Dr. Joy DeGruy says one way that we can begin to manage living in such a system that we do individually, because we first have to make sure we're healthy before we can start to change society. And the thing is, once we begin to do this work, there will start to be a domino effect, but we have to work on ourselves first. And this work is continuous. It's never, I have arrived. If you ever hear anyone say, I have been healed from everything that's ever been done to me, I would walk away, because that ain't true. There's something about to come in a quick minute that's about to trigger them. So I would be leery of people that make those type of statements. But Dr. Joy DeGruy says to take control of our inner world. So what does she mean by that? Listen to this. Hopefully I'm on the right page. So this is page 188. So she says to address these falsehoods, or what we believe, right? This ever-present anger and everything that we experience living in the US. What we need to do is look at ourselves and our community as a whole from our strengths rather than from a deficit perspective. Number one, we need to identify, focus, and articulate those positive characteristics in all of our interactions with our neighbors, coworkers, family, and friends. And we need to especially share these encouraging observations with African American children whose views of themselves are still being shaped. That's a biggie. So that's the first start. That's how we're beginning to start to take control of our inner world. And then she says the anger that lies just below our awareness and at times bursts forth seemingly out of our control is real. There is so much to be angry about. Many of us have accepted these feelings as simply the way we are. This anger contributes to a shortened lifespan. This is not just simply the way we are. To some degree, the anger is killing us. In some ways, it's like a pain we've adapted to accept. Unfortunately, as we adapt and accept, we don't see the need to handle our anger and to reduce our stress. So what Dr. Joy DeGruy tells us, controlling our inner world, and I didn't move this, controlling our inner world, it's about acknowledging I feel angry. Okay, so now what I do with that, reflect, how do I manage this? Maybe I write about it, maybe I journal about it, maybe I start a YouTube channel about it, but it's not to pretend that it's not there. Because it's going to come out. It can come out in the way we talk to each other. It can come out in the way we talk to our children. It's going to eventually come out. As my cousin, who is a therapist, would say, if we don't deal with our trauma would deal with us. So what are ways that we can start to manage our stress? Maybe through meditation, maybe through yoga, but whatever modality you use, I strongly recommend that it's not something in which you pretend that it's not there. We have to acknowledge when we feel angry. We have to acknowledge when we feel sad and not just say, oh, I'm all right. It's fine. It's not fine. And when we're not dealing with the pain and trauma that we feel, it's only getting buried and it's going to start to surface. It may surface in back pain, knee pain. It may surface in how we are unable to maintain and cultivate healthy relationships. It's going to manifest and come out. So it's so important that we recognize that and say, I feel angry. And the one thing I want to stress is you may feel angry. It doesn't mean that you are angry. If you are listening to this and you grew up in a household where someone said, you always angry, you just an angry person. No, something triggered that, something caused it, and we have to figure out what that thing is that led to you feeling that way. So I encourage you that we cannot continue to ignore the feelings of feeling angry, the stress. It is stressful. There's been so many studies about how race causes stress. And that stress does affect your body, and it can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, and some form of cancers. This is real. Us pretending that racism doesn't impact us doesn't mean that it's not. It's going to show up in our bodies because we were not meant to live. No human beings were meant to live in a type of society such as this. I want to go back to the ever-present anger really quick. Let's go back for a sec. So the ever-present anger that we may feel, you know, when you see videos on social media, you see images, and even you look in history. The other day, I was watching the History Channel, and I love history, and I used to love the History Channel, but it's something different now. I don't know what's going on in the History Channel, but it's something different. And they were talking about um, the Greeks and how they build and what they built, um, and then they also they first I watched the episode. They were talking about the Romans. They're talking about Rome and how what they build, what they were to manufacture and um, create, I should say. And then they talked about the Greeks, and it was like I think there was like their top 10 inventions that they made. And I remember in school, like learning about ancient history, right, and um, learning about contributions to society. And I didn't learn until I learned on my own time the contributions that African peoples and African Americans contributed to society. And even that in itself can, I felt myself getting angry watching these episodes because it's like, I know that they were contributing. It was just like, and this is the first ever, and they were able to, and it's like, I don't want to take anything away from any other group. But let's be honest when we're telling history. So again, that like this feeling of, okay, the way things, the reason that the things are the way they are is because y'all have made no contributions. So therefore, this is how it is. And that's not true. So when you think about what our kids, what our children are learning in school, are they even learning that they've made a contribution, that they come from people that have many talents, many gifts, other than entertaining, other than singing, dancing, dribbling a basketball, throwing a football? Did they make any contributions to society? And when you continue to see this narrative painted that no, you have not, for those that do know, especially, there is this ever present anger. And there's not really a platform in mainstream media where you can be honest about it and say, listen, can we have an honest conversation? I mean, to have an honest conversation about race, but then to take action, because that would change how our society is, right? So I encourage you, as you are on this path and we're dealing with this anger, and I'm not saying once you meditate and you're going to do some yoga and you're going to do some down dog and you're going to be able to do a handstand, headstand, and a split, that, ooh, child, I am no longer dealing with this anger. I'm definitely not gonna say it's gonna go away. But there is a way that we have to manage our self-care. And maybe it is stepping away from social media. Maybe it is beginning to really pay attention to our mental and emotional health. Because it is not healthy living in a society in which you are deemed as the other and you are treated as the other, because you can start to internalize that. And once you internalize that, it's over. So how do we not internalize it? We don't internalize it. Dr. Joy DeGruy recommends that we take control of our inner world. We begin to practice self-care. And self-care isn't just doing things to distract ourselves from what's going on. Self-care is like sitting with, okay, I'm feeling angry right now. I am pissed off. That's not this woman talking to me. I am what? Acknowledging that. Now, okay, now that I'm angry, I'm upset. How do I have to do this in a constructive way? And I know it gets annoying, right? Because sometimes it's like, well, how come I always got to be the bigger person? And I'll be honest with you. You know why? Reality is your life depends on it. As African Americans, you don't have the luxury to just kind of go off on anybody except another Black person. Because if you get the cops involved, or even maybe HR, it can go very badly very quickly. So unfortunately, we just have to manage ourselves. And so that's why I am doing this podcast. That's why I really want to bring the healing modalities and benefits of practicing yoga, meditation, and other ways that we can begin to work and heal and deal with maybe the anger that we feel inside. Our young Black men, um, there's a lot that they don't express to us about the anger that they feel. Maybe being able to really provide for their families, being in a space where they can express being a man, right? Sometimes, and that's the other thing, I'm not going to get into that. Like, a lot of people think of being a man as anger, aggression, and all this other stuff. I'm not going to get into that. But the full expression of what we have come to learn that a man does is not only provide that emotional and mental support for families, but also the benefits of producing. And we've seen the disparities. We've seen how many of our Black men are unemployed. This is well before COVID-19. How when you look at their salaries versus their white counterparts with the same educational level, same experience, how they receive a salary that is far below, again, their white counterparts. We see that also with Black women and white women. So all of this, it's hard to be in all of this and know this all the time and not get a sense of anger. But it's what are we going to do with the anger? And the only thing we can do is begin to manage it within ourselves. And how do we do that? Again, through maybe doing a yoga practice, going on, and not even if you say, well, listen, Kaii Marie, I don't have no extra money to go to no yoga class, or I don't feel comfortable going to a yoga class because I will be the only Black person, and then I will feel stressed all over again. I understand that. And I will talk about that in future episodes. There are lots of yoga videos on YouTube where you can practice yoga in the comfort of your own home. Myself, I will be having a live restorative yoga session on Mondays starting May 4th. You can check that out on Facebook. My Facebook is Kaii Marie _ the healing element. So you can check those out. But I really want us to begin to acknowledge when we feel pain. It is okay. Acknowledge it. Now, what are we going to do about it? How do we begin to release it? If it's writing, if it's drawing, if it's talking about it. Let's start to create those safe spaces where we can just let it out. And sometimes it's just a vent. It's not even like, okay, so now what are we going to do? Sometimes you just have to vent, let it out, and then carry on. It also means about really taking care of our bodies. What are we eating? Not only mentally, but physically, what are we consuming? And so I look forward to future episodes as well, where we're going to talk about healthy living, healthy eating, and how to do that. Again, breaking the cycle of just not living a holistic lifestyle. But that happens when you are under chronic stress. You don't have time, right? You are in survival mode 24/7. And so what Dr. Joy DeGruy is laying out is beginning to change that and turn that tide to no longer living in survival mode. And we can do it. We can do it together. And this is why I wanted to do the Healing Element podcast is, oops. Here we go. Sorry, guys. I kind of lost my video. That's why I wanted to create the Healing Element podcast, to create a platform where we can have those hard discussions regarding trauma, regarding historical trauma, regarding inherited trauma, so we can begin to understand what trauma is, how it impacts us, but then how we can heal to break the cycle, right? We have the power to do it. I know we're more than capable, and we can do it together. You are not in this alone. And I am here for you, and we are building a whole community that will be here for each other. So I thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. Please make sure you join me same time, same place next week for a new episode. We're still going to be talking about Dr. Joy DeGruy's work. I look forward to bringing on some guests that have some wonderful, wonderful advice for you as you are on your healing journey, or if you are just starting your healing journey, some great advice for you. So, as I said, stay tuned for more. Also, make sure if you are watching this as a video on the Healing Element YouTube channel, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I would love your thoughts. If you have show topics, ideas that you would like, please submit to me and see if I can make it happen. All right. And if you are listening to this video, please make sure you subscribe to the Healing Element podcast. Please download the episodes. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the space. I'm excited about connecting with everyone. And please do share this information with others, and so we can start to have this type of conversation in our networks. We are all on this healing journey together, and we all need a support system to make it through. So if you guys want to know more about me and my services, please visit kaimarie.com, and please make sure you sign up for the Journey to Healing newsletter. It's a bi-weekly newsletter, and I provide tips on how you can manage your stress, also some yoga goodies in there, meditation, and also you'll be the first to know when we have new announcements that will be beneficial to you and your family. So you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.